Hello friends, in this session we are going to see exception handling and exception handling in Java, right? So what is exception? First we need to understand very clearly what is exception and then what is handling, right? Exception and handling. So first we'll start with a small program. Suppose you have a class test, and in that you have, say, one main method, public static void and main method with a string type array. And in the main method you have some SOP statements, say main started, and I'll declare some variables, say string s, one variable, and some integer type x. Then s I'll initialize with some, say, abc, and a is initialized, sorry, x is initialized with 10, and print those, say printing s and printing x also, right? Then I'll write one more SOP statement here. It is main ends. This is a normal small program which is not having any exception currently. And if we see the execution flow of this program, say this you are executing from the command prompt, and this is the console assume, and here you have written to execute this test, you will write here Java and test, right, and press enter. When you are writing like this, then for Java, JVM has to start, and test.class file should be an input to the JVM, right? So when you will write Java and test in console and print, press enter, then JVM has to start. And when JVM will start, JVM requests some memory from the operating system, and those memory JVM will divide into multiple parts. So mainly three parts we are going to see here in this diagram. So the parts are, I'll divide like this. So you have a method area, and you have one stack memory, and you have one heap memory, right? So this is stack sorry, this is actually method area, stack memory, and heap, right? So JVM started, memory is allocated, all memory divided into different parts, and it is fine. Now when you will say test, JVM will check that test class is going to be loaded, okay, and inside the test class, first JVM will verify inside the test class main method is standard main method, right, with public static void main and one string type args here, one dimensional string array with this standard signature main method is available or not. Okay, main method is available. If it is available, then load the class test. Here test class is loaded. This is test loaded. Then main is already verified, and main has to be executed. So for execution, any block in Java, for any block execution in Java, first the block has to be loaded in the corresponding stack memory, and then only it can start execution, right? So main is also a block from here and till this is the block, main block. So main block is going to execute because after loading the test class, JVM will call the main method, right? This is a method has to be called. So JVM will call the main method, and main method will load in the stack memory, and then it starts execution, right? This is the main block, main stack frame in stack memory, right? And when any block starts, when any block executes in Java program, any block executes, the block execution flow is always top to bottom approach. This is the execution flow of any block in Java program. So when JVM loads the main method in the stack memory and start execution, then first time the control points to the main method. This is the main method. and this statement control is pointing to the first statement, and this is SOP statement. This statement main method has to execute, right? So first statement is that JVM will execute, means it will give an output here. Say output will be main started in the console, main started. Then control flows to the next statement, and it is here now. It allocates a memory for S. It is a variable declaration, so it allocates a memory for S. But S is here a local variable, right? Local variable. So local variable memory should be allocated inside the corresponding stack frame. So here it allocates a memory with the name S, and the size of course is 8 byte because it is a reference variable, right? Fine. So this statement evaluation is over. Then control moves to the next statement, and this is also another variable declaration only, and there is of type int, and this is also local, so this also goes to the corresponding stack frame. This is X, and the size of that is 4. Both these will not have default values because these are the local variables that you already know. And then control moves to the next statement, and ABC is the value that has to assign to S, but it is a string literal, so it has to create an object in the heap. It is creating an object ABC. The object address is 1040, and that address assigned to S, means S is pointing to this now, right? Okay, then control moves to the next statement. 10 has to store into X, right? So the X is initialized with 10. Done. Then control goes to the next statement. S has to print, so it is printing S. It is fine, and it is printing in the console. So the S value is ABC, so it will print here ABC. ABC is printed. Control moves to the next statement. X has to be printed. X value is 10, and it is printing here 10. Then fine. Control goes to the next statement, and it gives main ends. So this is the execution flow of this program and the output, right? And the control flow, important point you have to notice here, the control flow. Control is flowing from top to bottom approach. After each statement execution, control automatically goes to the next statement. That is very important point you have to notice here. And currently in this program you don't have any exception, and all the statement executed normally, no problem, it is fine. And once the execution is over, JVM destroys all this memory, and the memory will be returned back to the operating system, and JVM will be terminated. So this is the normal flow execution, normal execution flow of this program, which is not having any exception. Now here our main goal is to understand what is actually the exception. What is an exception means. An exception is, suppose I'll do this some modification on this program, right? So say suppose the S value is, when I'm initializing in this, S value I'll give ABC, okay fine, but X value is not this, and say S value is also not this. First time, say it has one S value, I'll give something like this, say 10, S is 10, and 10 is of type string, right? It is string type S, so 10 is the value for S now, and which is of type string, and X should get the value of S, right? S value should be stored into X. So directly I cannot write here S, it is not valid, right? Incompatible, right? S is of type string and X is of type int. We cannot store a string type value to int type directly. So this is not okay. It is a compilation fail error, incompatible type. So what I have to do is this S I have to convert to this int type, and then only I can store into that into the X, right? So for conversion from string type to int type, you already know that integer class is having a static function parse int of some string, so this is S, right? Okay, fine. Now here again, if we check the execution flow again, when we will write Java and test, then JVM started, allocated the memory, divided into multiple parts. From that method area here, and stack and heap, right? Then JVM will verify the test main method is there or not. Okay, main method is available in the test, fine. Then test will be loading over, and JVM calls the main method. When JVM calls the main method, and main method will go to the stack memory and the execution flow is again of course top to bottom approach. Right, so first time the control points to the first statement of the main method, and the first statement is main started. So main started is printing in this. Okay, fine, this is main started. Then S1 is a local variable, again S1 memory is allocated, X memory is allocated. Okay, then control is in the next. 10 should be assigned to S, right? 10 should be assigned to S. Now this is not here ABC. Now this value is actually 10. What I have given here is 10, right? Fine, then control goes to the next statement, and in next statement the S value has to be converted to integer type and stored into X. So S value is 10, 10 is converted to integer type and stored into X. It is fine, this is fine, no problem, it is okay. Right, now print the S. Okay, S is printing, that is not ABC, it is 10, and print X, X is also of course 10 again, and main, and execution flow is over, finish, fine, no problem. But now if I say that S value is not 10, S value is, come back to the previous value, the previous value is ABC, S value is ABC, and this is not 10 now, it is again ABC. And now what I will do is this S again I am converting to integer type and storing into X, right? Again I am converting this S and storing into X. Now execution flow of a main method, again top to bottom approach. Main is started, okay, S memory is allocated, fine, X memory is allocated, also fine, S is initialized with ABC, now S is ABC, and X value, control is at this point, and it has to print, it has to convert this S to integer type and store into X. Now when JVM will take the S value, what is the S value? S value is ABC. ABC has to be converted to integer type, but ABC, if you convert to integer type, it is not convertible, it is not a valid literal for integer type variable. So when parseInt method tries to convert this ABC, which is in S, to this type, it faces a problem. It gets that ABC is not of type numeric values, and that cannot be converted to corresponding integer type. So what JVM has to do? Previously when we have given here 10, 10 was a numeric value and it could be converted to corresponding primitive type, that is int, and parseInt function was successful to do that, and it did, and is stored into the X, it is fine. But now the value of S is ABC, which is a string type, it is a sequence of characters. Now parseInt function cannot convert that ABC to integer type, so this is not okay. Now what JVM will do? In this scenario, the parseInt function is failed to convert the value of S to corresponding primitive integer type, it is failed. Then JVM cannot, what JVM will do in this scenario is, JVM cannot take decision on its own, and it cannot say, okay, don't execute this statement and go to the next statement and start executing the remaining statements. It cannot do like that, right? So control is at this point. Now here what JVM has to do is, JVM has to tell you that the value which you have given to S, which is ABC, is not possible to convert to corresponding integer type. This information JVM has to tell you. It has to give that information to you, and then based on that you can say to the JVM that, okay, fine, if ABC is not possible to convert to integer type, it is not a problem, okay, fine, go to some other statement and execute the other statements, that you have to decide. Or you can say, okay, by mistake I have given the value of S as ABC and it was supposed to be 10 like this, or some other numeric values, and okay, I'll change this value to numeric values, and then you convert and then try and continue the execution, right? So this is actually the exception. Here is the exception. Okay, exception is, you have written some statement to JVM to evaluate and to execute and to give some output, but actually JVM is failed to do that. So this is an exception. But how this exception actually came here, how this situation actually came here, it is by mistake. You were supposed to give 10 at this place, and by mistake you have given some ABC. Okay, by mistake, or some user has given ABC by mistake at this place, and because of that JVM is facing this problem here, right? And when a developer will develop an application, you will expect always that S value should be a numeric type value, or it should be a value which can be converted to corresponding primitive type. But because by mistake, say the end user did a mistake, and by mistake he has given the value here as some character type values or some sequence of characters, then JVM cannot convert that to corresponding type, and it cannot take a decision also on its own, and it has to inform you that this is the problem I am facing, now what to do, right? This JVM has to do. That how JVM will do is, JVM will inform you through an exception. So this is an exception. An exception is an unexpected situations which may raise in your application and which may interrupt the normal execution flow of your program, right? If the program may not execute normally, it will face some problem, or somewhere in middle the program execution will stop, right? Or it will behave something differently. So an exception is an unexpected situations, right? Where JVM cannot take a decision what to do, and it cannot continue the execution also. So what JVM will do in this scenario currently, when you are giving here ABC and it has to convert to corresponding primitive type, what JVM will do is when any this kind of scenario comes to JVM where JVM cannot take a decision what to do, then JVM raises one event. Okay, JVM will raise an event, one situation, one scenario, and that event, based on that event, JVM is having so many built-in ready-made classes which is already in your machine, and that is bundled with your JDK. When you have installed JDK, all that gone to your machine. Now from all these classes, JVM will, depending on this event, JVM will find out what is the corresponding class for this scenario, right? What is the corresponding class for this scenario, and currently in this scenario which problem JVM is facing, for that the corresponding class is number format exception is the class. Number format exception is the class, right? So based on this scenario, JVM will find out one event, and based on that event it will find out the corresponding class, and it creates, JVM automatically creates an object of this class by calling the constructor, right? So what JVM will do is, JVM will say new number format exception, this object is created. And of course this object is created, why? Because the object has to carry a message, an error message. Here you will give a message, or JVM will give a message here, and the message will say which value was not able to convert to corresponding integer type. So when any such kind of scenario is raising in front of JVM, that JVM cannot evaluate that particular statement, or JVM cannot take a decision what to do, then JVM gets the corresponding class and it creates an object, and with that object it binds a message with this. And then JVM has to pass this message to you. It has to give that message to you which is containing the information. So to do that, after creating the object, JVM says throw new number format exception. Object is generated. So now totally if you see clearly, we can understand here one thing, that when JVM is failed to perform any operation, then JVM creates an object. JVM creates an object of some particular type. So you can say that instead of evaluating this complete expression integer dot parseInt of 4, parseInt of ABC, instead of evaluating this, JVM got an exception. JVM got an object, actually JVM got an object, and which is containing the message, right? Which is containing the message. Now here you have an assignment operator in this. Assignment operator means, say if I write like this, int a is equal to 10, what is the meaning? The right side value, or if I write 10 plus 2 is equal to a, like this, if I write, then this is a complete expression. Expression has to be evaluated and result has to store into a, right? Means the a value should be now 12, like this it has to store. But before storing the result, the complete expression has to be evaluated, and after evaluating this expression, what result is coming, the result is 12, 12 has to store into A. Now after evaluating this expression, if the result is coming integer type, 12 is currently integer type, so that I can store into A, it is fine, no problem. But after evaluating an expression in this side, suppose if I concatenate here one empty string also, then this, after evaluating this complete expression, the result becomes 12 only, but this 12 is now of type string, so that you cannot store into A because A is of type int. So a complete expression has to be evaluated and result has to store into this left side variable, right? This you already know. But in this our scenario, what we are getting here is this complete expression. Now you consider this complete as an expression and this is an assignment operator. After evaluating this expression, result has to store into X. But what JVM got after evaluating this expression? JVM got an object of type number format exception. Now this object is of type number format exception, which actually we cannot store into X because X is of type int. This complete expression is ending up with an object of type number format exception, and this is exception object here, right? So if I need to store this object which JVM is getting in this point, I need a reference variable which is of type number format exception. I cannot store that into X. So JVM, what JVM will do is, in this case JVM will get an object of type number format exception and it cannot be stored into X. So what will happen automatically here, this object will not get any storage in this location, so the object automatically moves to the caller of the method where the exception is raised, where the object is created. So currently the object is created inside the main method, and the object is not having any reference variable to store here, so object automatically moves to the caller of the main method. Now who is the caller of the main method? Main method is calling by JVM. JVM is calling the main method, and then main method comes into the stack memory and it starts execution, right? So now the exception object is not having any reference variable at this place, and so the object automatically moves to the JVM. Means from here, from this statement, the object moves to the JVM, it goes to the JVM, right? And when object, this is not a normal object actually, right? This is an exception object. This is an exception object, and the exception object is created by JVM because of this scenario, because some statement was, certain statement was not able to execute by JVM. So because of that reason, JVM has created an object of type number format exception which actually contains the message what problem JVM is facing. So the exception object finally it moves to the JVM, and when exception object moves to the JVM like this, along with that exception object, the control which was flowing here one after another statement, from here it came to this place, and from here, because of this exception object is moving to the JVM, so along with the exception object, control also moves to the JVM. Right? Then when control moves to the JVM along with the exception object, what JVM does is, JVM is having some default handling technique, default handler technique. The default handler reference, it is a reference variable which actually immediately starts pointing to this object, right? And it does some other operation with that, that is inside the JVM. So that part we are going to see a little later, what actually JVM does with that. And if the exception object moves to the JVM, along with that control also is moving to the JVM, then from where it has moved, it has gone from this location, right? From this location. So from here control moves to the JVM. Now control will not come into the next statement. Here control is not coming, here also it is not there. So these statements are not going to execute. And because of this reason, the remaining statement will not execute, and program execution will not be continued. It will be terminated because you have lost the control. The control which was in your hand here inside the main method, now it is not with you. It has gone to the JVM along with the exception object, right? So what you want is exception came into this, okay, fine. Something happened along with the JVM, some object is created, or raising the exception, or generating the event, or whatever it is doing, okay, fine. What I want is, after evaluating in this statement whether successfully or unsuccessfully, with exception or without exception, what I want is, I don't want to lose the control, and I want the remaining statement execution should be continued. This is exception handling. So when the remaining statement will continue the execution, if the control is not moving to the JVM, if the control is not moving to the JVM, then whatever remaining statements are there in this, after that statement which is giving an exception, if control is not moving to the caller or currently to the JVM, then remaining statement execution continues. Right. Here remaining statement is not executing because the control has moved to the JVM along with this exception object. So your task here is, what you have to do is, okay, whatever scenario is happening here, it is fine. I don't want the control to go to the JVM. I want whatever situation is happening here, okay, fine. Control should be here, and so that the control should flow to the remaining statement, and remaining statement should be executed successfully, right? So here what is exception is some statement which JVM cannot evaluate, and JVM cannot take any decision also on that. So JVM informs you. How JVM informs you? JVM creates an object by getting the corresponding class for that particular scenario along with the message, and JVM gives that object to you. That is exception object. Fine, that is exception object. And when exception happens in your program, why remaining statement is not executing? Because exception object cannot stay here. It automatically moves to the caller, and when object is moving to the caller, control also flows from your program to the caller, and because of that remaining statement is not going to execute. So from this discussion you can say an exception is nothing but an object. An exception is nothing but an object which carries some information what JVM is facing, right? What JVM is facing. So this is an exception, unwanted situations or unexpected situations which may raise in JVM and which terminates the normal flow of execution of your program, right? So this is an exception, and exception is nothing but an object. Now if we check that with some other programs, say suppose you have say you have another class ABC. In ABC class you have a method, say void show method, and inside the show method you should have a, say, one string type argument, say s, and inside this I'll write some SOP statement, say show method started, and I'll have a int x is equal to integer dot parse int of s, and I'll have say I'll print the s of x also, and show method ends, right? Show method ends. Now in class ABC you have a show method, right? And I'll take one more say you have a class test, and test is having the main method public static void, and this is main method of string type args. Right, now in these I want to call, say it is till this, and I want to call the show method of ABC. Now in ABC, show method is a instance method, right? So to call an instance method you need an object of type ABC. So first I'll create an object of ABC, A1 is new ABC, and I'll call A1 dot show with, say first time it is a string type argument, but the value is 99. When you call like this, then what happens is execution flow, right? JVM, when you will write in the console Java and say test, JVM will start and JVM will verify in the test main is there or not. Okay, main is there. Then JVM calls the main method along with the class name test.main, right? Then main starts execution. When main starts execution, okay, we'll add two more point here, SOP statement. So this is main started, and here main ends. And okay, till this is done, okay, then I'll take one more a1.show again. I'll call, and I'll call this time with say hi, like this. So when I'll write in console Java and test class is loaded, main method started execution, and control is at first statement, and JVM executes the first statement, and it is a simple SOP statement, so it is prints in the console main method started. Right, simple. Then control comes to the next statement. This is a reference variable a1, local variable, so this is a1 memory is allocated somewhere, and when I will say new ABC class has to be loaded, it will load and create an object of ABC. This is ABC 1040, this is here 1040. Run it. Okay. Now when you will say okay, the second statement evaluation is also over, and then control automatically moves to the next statement, and next statement is a function call a1.show with 99. Then what will happen from a1.show, and you will say the control which was pointing to show will move to the show method, this, right? But it has an argument also. Argument is 99. This has to come into this s. So s here is a local variable, the value of s is 99 in this. Fine. Now control is inside the show method, and show method is also loaded inside the method stack, right? Stack memory on the top of the main method. Now control is flowing here in the first statement, show started. So here you will get the output show started, right? This is show started, show method of course, and then control goes to the next statement. One x local variable memory is allocated, this is x, and x value is integer dot parseInt of s. Now what is the s value? S value is 99. 99 should convert to integer type and store into x. That is done. This is 99 stored into x, and then print the x. So x value here is 99, and control is here. Now it is show method ends, right? So control in the show method, control came from the main method in this statement. When the show method execution is over, control automatically moves to the same here, right? And now this evaluation is over. Then control moves to the next statement, a1.show again, a1.show. Means from here again control has to go to show, and say from here again control is moving to show, and it is moving like this. Now again for s you are sending another value. Now the value is high, so s memory is there, but the value is not 99, it is high now. Now control is inside the show method, and the first statement it is pointing into this is show started. So again reprint here show started, right? Show started. And now control is in the next statement, integer dot parseInt of s. Now s is high. High should be converted to integer type by this function, and it is to store into x. But JVM cannot convert high to integer type value, because the high is not a convertible of type int. You cannot convert. JVM cannot do it. So what JVM will do? JVM now facing a problem here. In previous call it was okay because the value was 99. In this call it is not okay, it is high, so JVM is facing the problem here. Now what JVM has to do? It will raise an event here, event, and based on that find out the corresponding class, and class is number format exception, and it creates an object new number format exception, new number format exception with number format exception object is created with some message here, right? Now it has to given to the user, so it has to say here throw new number format exception. Now instead of evaluating this complete expression, now JVM end up with an object of type. This is an object of type number format exception. Now this object cannot be stored into X, and it is not having any other reference variable in this to hold this object address, right? And to hold the object address, the reference variable should be of type number format exception type only, because it is a class and the object is of that type. So no reference variable is found in this location to hold this object. Then what will happen? The object should flow to the caller of the function, right? The caller of the function, where the exception is raised. Now where the exception object is raised, exception object is raised inside the show. Now who is the caller of the show function? Show function caller is the main function. From where the control came. Control came from this location. So this statement is calling the show function, and in this call only it got an exception object. So it will move to this. It is moving here. When control is at this point, then JVM got this exception, and the exception object was not hold here, so it is moving into this location. Exception object coming into the main function. If exception object comes into the main function, then these two statement, control is not flowing to these two, so this two statement is also not going to be executed, right? Because from here the exception object came into the main method. Control is lost, so this two statement is not going to execute. Now this object number for exception object came into this place. This is also actually an expression, and JVM was failed to evaluate this expression, because instead of evaluating this completely successfully, it got an exception object in this, and that came into this. This is also again number format exception. Now instead of evaluating this statement, JVM got an exception object, and because no one was here to hold that object, and object is moving into the main method here. Now this statement, instead of evaluating this statement successfully, JVM got the exception object, right? Now this exception object is also, nobody is here to hold it, so this also again will flow to the caller of the function. Now where it is currently, it is inside the main. Now who is the caller of the main method? Main method caller is JVM, right? JVM. Now this will move to JVM. This object will move to JVM. Now JVM is having some default handler technique, and it will hold it and it will do something. But the problem what you are facing here is control came till this only, and it has not reached into this location, and before that only control moved to the JVM. So remaining statement execution is not happening, it will not execute. So what you have to do in this case, you hold the object which is coming here. Why it is moving directly like this? Because nobody is here to hold it. And if exception object is not holding by any reference variable, then only it moves automatically to the caller of the function. Now if I want to execute this statement successfully, then here only I have to hold the exception object, so that control remains here only, and it can go to the remaining statement. Okay, assume I am not holding this object here, or I am not handling it here, then this two statement will not handle, it will not execute, it will not execute, and control will, exception object will come into this location inside the main. So when control will come into the main function, in that from here again it is flowing to the JVM. So if these statements are not executing, if I want to execute this statement, then here also I can handle the object at this point, then control remains here and it can continue the remaining execution, right? So this is what actually the exception is. The exception is nothing but an object, okay? And why this object is generating? Object is generating based on the situations where JVM is unable to execute some statements. And why JVM is generating that exception object? It is generating that exception object to inform you what exactly the scenario is happening here, and why JVM is failed to execute certain statements, right? So this is for your information. JVM is getting that exception object to inform you, but you are not able to collect that information, and because of that it is flowing automatically from one place to another, and along with that object control is also flowing from one place to another, and because of that some statements of your program is not executing. So your main task in this is you have to hold the control so that it should not flow automatically from one place to another place. So if you want to do that, if you want to keep the control along with you, what you have to do is you hold the object. Hold the object. Object should not move from one place to another place. If object is not moving from one place to another place, then control also remains in the same place and it automatically goes to the next statement, and the program execution will be continued normally. It is not going to terminate abnormally. Right. So this is exception. This is exception. Now what are the scenarios where you will get the exceptions, or why will you give high? Why you are not giving 99? If you give 99 or any numeric values at this place, you are not going to get any exception and all the statements are executing successfully. Why will you give 99? Of course nobody will give 99 directly. The scenario is like this. Suppose you have a registration form somewhere in some application, and you have a registration form in some application and the user has to fill up the form. Say you have a form something like this. Here enter your name and one text box you give, enter your email, one text box, enter your phone, one text box, and something, age, and finally you say submit. This is a form, submit button. Now when user will fill this form and you are collecting that values into a Java program, say here it is a Java program you are writing and collecting that values from this form to a Java program, and finally you are storing that values into a database. You're storing into a database, right? And when you are storing those values into a database, say this is the table and all these values you are collecting and storing into this database, right? So first is name, we will store here, email and phone and age. And in this database, when you are creating this table, you have to mention the database type for any particular column. So this is name, say name is of type varchar, email is of type varchar, phone is of type long, and age is of type int. Data type is mentioned. Now in the name can be only of type varchar type, email can be of varchar type, phone must be of type long, and age must be of type int. And when user is entering the information here, something like this, say ABC and ABC at ksc dot or ck.com and some phone number 111 and some age is say 23. All these values you are collecting into the Java program. Here name is say ABC and email is ABC at ksc, and phone is of type 111 and age is of say 23. So whatever values you are collecting in this, all these values are by default of type string, right? All these values are by default of type string. Now I cannot directly store these values into this table directly. Name is of type ABC, okay, here it is string and here it is varchar, so name is fine, you can store. Email is of type here it is of type string, here it is of type varchar, so that is also okay, fine. But phone number is this place it is string, but here this is of type long. So what you have to do, you have to typecast, you have to convert that to long type and then only you can store. Age also of type string and here it is of type int, so you cannot store. You have to typecast that to integer type and then only you try to store. So for converting this to long type, what you have to do, long L is equal to long dot parse long of phone, and it's going to convert, okay, fine. Now age is of type int, say age is equal to integer dot parse int of some age, it is converted. Now L and age you store into this P, This is phone and this is age. Now these values are of corresponding type, you can store directly, fine, no problem. And these program you have already written into this Java program, already ready, right? And then you are creating some SQL statement, storing, and everything fine. But assume by mistake what the user did when user is filling this form, by mistake what user did is instead of phone number he has given his name ABC. Okay, name ABC. Now this value is not 111, this is ABC. And here this value already it is hard-coded value. You have written here long dot parse long of this, and this is getting ABC, and ABC should be converted to long, which is not possible. So in this case, when you are developing the application, you are writing it perfectly, it is fine. But when actually the user is giving this value at this place, actually he is giving a wrong value, and because of that, the entire application is going to be terminated of the execution. Right. So this is, in this type of scenario you can get a exception. Or assume the scenario can be like this. You have written a Java program, some Java program you have written, and the task of this program is it has to read a file, and get the data from this file and store into the Java program or something. Okay, and the file is assumed in your D drive some abc.txt file. When you are writing the program, you have this file in your D drive abc.txt, and when user is executing the program, okay, when executing it is getting the file, whatever data is there in this, the program is reading and performing some operation fine. But assume after some day somebody has came and this guy somewhere the file is deleted by someone, and after some day again when you are writing this program, the file is not present in this location, so it will give an error, okay, file is not found. Then how to read the data? Or when somebody else is running this program in other machine somewhere else where the file is not available in that local machine, then again it gives the same problem saying that JVM is not able to find the file and it cannot read the data. Then JVM also again has to inform you, right? Or assume this program, you are writing a program here and you are going to store the data into the database, but database is not present in your machine, or whatever address you have given in that location, database is not present at all. Then also JVM may face these types of problems. So this is actually the exception. So exception here you can say, exception is an unexpected situations which may raise in your application and which may interrupt the normal execution of the program, right? Or program execution will be terminated abnormally. And what exactly the exception in this is, the exception is nothing but actually an object, right? Now, handling of the exception. And what exactly happens when any exception comes, because control goes from one place to another place, and automatically it flows automatically along with the exception object, right? So now what is handling? This is exception, and what exactly happens in JVM when any exception comes, right? And now what is handling? So we are going to see these two program, whatever program we have seen here, we are going to see the program in Eclipse execution, and I'll start the program in Eclipse. But here you have to understood very clearly what exactly the exception is, and in the next tutorial we are going to see what is handling, right? And control flow, how it disturbs the control flow of the program when any exception happens, or what JVM does when JVM is unable to execute any particular statement which is in your program, right? Now from this discussion we understood very clearly that any exception is nothing but an object of some particular predefined type of classes, right? Particular predefined type. So that is an exception. An exception is an object of any particular type. So if any exception is an object, now then what is compile time exception? Because if exception is an object, object can be created by JVM only when the JVM is running, and when heap memory is present, only inside the heap memory only the exception object has to be placed. Now when JVM is running, that time only you will have the heap memory, and you can create the object, or JVM can create some object, can be placed inside the heap. But at the time of compilation also we are getting some exceptions. At that time, at the compilation time of a program, JVM is not running, then how it is generating an object, or where it is placing those objects. So from here the very important question you should understand, what is a compile time exception then? If all the exceptions are objects, then what is a compile time exception? So these we are going to discuss in the next tutorials. And now let us see these programs whatever we have discussed here. We'll see the execution of those programs with Eclipse. So we'll take a program, declare a project, say new simple Java project is take. Java project, so it is exception handling, and remaining will okay, so finish. Say in take class test1 in the package com.kc.p1 package and main method. Inside the main method, same we will take as a first program what we did there. Take a SOP statement. So this is main started, and declare a variable of type, say first you take a s, first time no value, int x, and then s is equal to some abc, and x is equal to 99, print the s and print x, right? And finally main ends, right? Run this program. The output should be main started. Okay, this is main started. One s variable is allocated, x variable declared, abc assigned to s, 99 assigned to x, s value is abc will be printed, 99 will be printed for x, and main ends, right? Run this. Right, so this is the output, right? Main started, abc, 99, and main ends. Now if I do like this, say s value is 10, and this is directly s we cannot assign, directly assigning s is not okay, this is incompatible type. So x is equal to convert integer dot parseInt of s, right? Sorry, parseInt of s it is, right? Now you check, it is okay, but the output both is 10 and 10, right? Main started, or main started, s is 10, x is 10, and main ends. It is okay, fine, it is able to convert that, right? Because this value of 10, value of s is 10, and it is convertible to integer type, so it is fine. But if I take the abc is abc, s is abc, then this parseInt function cannot convert abc to int type. So here the exception raised, and it will get the object, and the object will be created. Because you are not holding the object, so it will go to the JVM. So remaining statement is not going to execute, right? Abnormal execution, and it will be terminated. Till this only it will execute, here only it will get the problem, and it is terminated. But the exception object from here will go to the JVM, and JVM will do some operation on that. What JVM will do, we'll discuss that little later. And currently you will get the output here, just main started, and remaining is not going to print, right? Run it. Just main started, then exception came. Exception is of type number format exception. Okay, these all is actually coming from the JVM because the exception object has moved to the JVM. And what exactly JVM is doing, how these outputs are coming at this point, all that we are going to discuss at the time of handling the exception topic, right? So this is one example we have seen. Next, another example is, say I'll take here test 2. Say new class test 2, right? There also main method is required and it is finish. In this you write SOP statement, say main started and this is main function. Then at this point main ends, right? Now you take a class hello, and inside the hello class you have a method void show, and show method takes an argument of type string some s, right? And in this what we did is printing. First statement is show method started and show method ends, right? Now here I'll just print the s first, say this is s, and I'll take one x is equal to integer dot parseInt of s, right? S, and print the x also, right? So this is the program. Now here from the main method I need to call the show, and show is an instance function, so we need an object at this point. So I'll create an object of hello here, h is equal to new hello, right? H dot show. I have to give a value here of type string, and the value I'll give here as 10. And fine, again I'll call show, and the value is say hi, right? So main method will start execution, and in that control is the first statement, so it is main started, hello object is created, okay, and show function is called. When you will call the show function along with the 10, it comes into this show, and the value of s is 10, and show is started, so s value is 10, okay. This is converting from string type to integer type, it is fine, it is convertible because you are giving 10, and x is printing, there is also 10, show ends, fine. When this execution is over of the show method, control moves back to this only, then from here it comes to the next statement hi. When I will give hi, or so this I will not give now, this is not there, and then this execution is successful, okay, control comes into this, it is main ends. So the output should be main started and show started, s value is 10, x value is 10, show ends, and main ends. No exception currently, right? Run it. Okay, this is the output. Fine. But if this statement is here, or this I am not giving, now what will happen? Main started, hello object is created, hi, show function is called with hi. It will come into show function, show is started, and s value is hi will be printed, and when hi is converting to integer type, JVM cannot do that. So here exception object generated, which is of number format exception, and here it is not held by any reference variable, so it will go to the caller, right? And currently the show method caller is the main function, so from here control goes to the main function, and along with the object, so remaining these two statement is not going to execute, and from this statement exception object comes into this, so control also come in this place, and from here also exception object is not handled by any reference variable, and from here it goes to JVM, and then JVM does something internally. So the output in this we are going to get main started, okay, then control is here, show started, okay, and then s value is hi will be printed. Then from here remaining statement, these two statement is not going to execute, and this is also not going to execute, right? Now run this program test2. So the output is till this. Main started okay, show started, as value is high. Then exception came. And JVM is doing this internally, right? So this is exactly what is exception, and what happens if you are not handling the exception, and how the control flows with the exception, and how object is created. That object creation we are also going to do little later explicitly, and we'll see the flow of that also in details. So from here you understood very clearly what is exception exactly, and what happens when any exception occurs in your application, and why the remaining statement of the program is not executing when any exception is there in the application, right? How it interrupts the normal flow of execution. Now in next tutorial we are going to see the handling of exception, and how the remaining statement will continue the execution even when the exceptions are there. So thanks for watching my video, and please subscribe my channel for more videos.